in Iraq, my understanding is that everything there is more or less fair game. I wish I had like the polling data, but it's insane. Yeah, I don't think Congress is very interested in power for themselves. Congress is interested in power to their party. I think the next debate is going to be really interesting. A lot is just like so much has happened in terms of like the polling.
Well, I would include super PACs.
Well, no, you just described where you're going, right? What you described was a super PAC.
And what about if you had to vote tomorrow? Who would you pick?
Like assuming like all the Democrats were running against like Trump. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna drop a nuclear take on this real fast. All of these guys are playing cards for points.
She has everything that
Wait, what are this weird like Republican or these like
no. I'm saying no.
The lion's share of the work is done, as much as people hate to hear, by people like Pelosi.
China was a lot like the USSR prior to that change. Afterward, they both had very different destinies. And timely enough, here's the man himself.
Well, then I just wonder.
Segue skills.
Yeah.
Well, let's
go ahead, Amro.
Now that we got everybody here, Destiny, welcome. Appreciate you coming. Why don't we kick this off?
Wait. Can you hear us, Destiny? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up? Thanks
all right. Hey, Destiny, how was that league game? Did you win?
Yeah, I did. Gold 1 now. Thanks.
Awesome. There you go.
All right, so let's kick this off. Welcome, everybody. So this is, I call it Yes Politics because every Twitch channel you go in, the rules say no politics. My channel focuses...
I wondered why.
Yeah.
I know.
My channel focuses on Capitol Hill. We take a close look at the Senate, House, what's going on there, and we're watching the 2020 races real closely. Not just the president, but Senate races, House races, even local and state races. So welcome, everybody. I'm excited. We've been doing these roundtables for a while. And I'm just happy to talk to all these Twitch politics rock stars. Destiny, thank you for making time to join us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sorry you didn't win the Raj Royale, but I was rooting for you, man.
It's all right. He didn't win the Raj Royale, but at least he won his solo queue game.
True.
There you go. Destiny, do you want to do a brief introduction just in case there's anybody here not familiar with you?
Yeah, I talk politics on Twitch. I encourage people to use sound empirical foundations to base their beliefs off of, rather than talking about insane, baseless bullshit that 95% of people on the internet do. It's more or less what I do. My leanings are pretty left economically. You'd call me a sock dem if you're far on the right. You'd call me a neoliberal if you're far on the left. And socially, my views are incredibly progressive.
Right on. Thank you so much. The first topic I wanted to rap about was Iran. Still hot in the press right now. But for me, from a domestic politics point of view, it looks like Congress is finally saying enough's enough. And even Republicans are starting to break ranks with Trump. You got people like Matt Gaetz, who voted for a war powers resolution to curb Trump's ability to use the military over there in Iraq versus Iran. And you've got senators like Mike Lee in Utah and Rand Paul from Kentucky, who spoke out after a briefing by the Trump administration saying this is insulting, this is demeaning. So I would want to throw it out to you guys and be like, is Congress at the point where they're finally had enough of the executive branch taking power? Oh, it seems like that's been going on for quite a while here. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I hope it goes through the Senate.
Yeah, I was about to say, I just do think it is kind of a little slippery slope to start limiting the executive branch on military powers. Now, yeah, I mean, there is a case to be made, but it is a slippery slope, so we have to make sure that we're not going to be affecting other presidents in the future.
Wait a second. I disagree, right? I mean, this has been a problem since like less than 100 years after like the Constitution was formed. I'm trying to think about a specific war. It's either the Mexican or Spanish-American War. I don't remember. But literally, the presidency is not supposed to have the power to basically like deploy troops at will. That's the whole idea, is that Congress is supposed to be the one who's able to declare war. Now, what presidents have done in the past is that they found this little loophole that's like, oh, we can still technically deploy those troops over here, and if they get attacked, there's no fucking way Congress is going to say, oh no, don't try to fight back, right? That would look like super unpatriotic. So presidents have been exploiting this for a really, really long time, when that shouldn't even be like a fucking loophole to begin with, right? Like, it was already established, like, Congress is the one who gets to decide when we go to war or not. And if you're deploying troops there that are fighting, or if you're launching missiles or whatever it may be, those are all acts of war, even if you don't officially name it war.
Do we think that should, let's see. Do you think we should have needed Congress to authorize action against Osama bin Laden when we found him in Pakistan?
That's a really good question.
I was about to bring that up too.
Yeah, so like I hate Loyal Logic. I don't know your beliefs, but I probably hate all of them. And I
No,
hate
you actually probably
Republican.
don't.
Okay, maybe, but
You know
I
you
agree
don't.
I agree 100%. Like military strikes are within the purview of what the president is probably responsible for, assuming he's been authorized for combat in a certain region. My understanding is that the president is authorized for combat operations after the authorization for use of military force in Iraq. I don't know. I know people are arguing with what does that apply to, but I mean, this is the leader of something that has been declared a terrorist organization. You can disagree with the classification, but the IRGC has been ruled that this guy is the leader of that organization. We had an opportunity to take him out in an area at a theater where the president is authorized to use force. I mean, like I'm still not sure if I disagree with it or not, but in terms of like what the president is authorized to do, this seems like it falls within the purview of the presidency. Like agree or disagree with the actual action, or like or hate Trump, which I fucking hate Trump.
Well,
Like,
and
I
I've
think the
stated
question
before,
should be like not whether. I mean, I agree. Like what he did was totally legal, but I think the question is whether Congress should have been able to have a say, or should be able to take back its say over this. I mean, just because they authorized this in the past doesn't mean they want to authorize more in the future.
Yeah, but I guess like my worry would be, or the thing is that I don't know if something like this is something that Congress can respond fast enough to. Like, let's say that you have a window of maybe 12 to 24 hours to do an attack like this. Do you have time to go through Congress? Like, are you worried about partisan stuff stopping that? Like, I'm not sure.
Well, there are definitely examples of where like there's no alternative, like the response to a nuclear attack. I mean, there's no other way than for the president to launch the order. So there are definitely examples of that, but I just don't. I mean, I think that the Constitution does, I think, envision that the Congress will normally be making the big decisions about where the United States will go. And I mean, just to give it all to the president like we do now and say,
But
okay, well, Congress follow along.
But he's the commander in chief.
I know, but that doesn't mean.
Yes, it does. I mean, he's the commander in chief of the United. Now, again, like the guy or just hate him, but when you start doing actions like this, it will affect other operations in the future. And Destiny brings up the valid point. Would you want Congress to have to authorize the killing of Osama bin Laden? All of us would be a no. If anybody said yes, then you honestly do not understand how geopolitics work and how much limited time you have to do operations like this.
So you
I disagree. I think I would say yes, just because, right? If we were talking about like slippery slope earlier on, which I think like it's usually a fallacy, but I think here it does apply. The point is that as we stand now with like the presidency's powers when it comes to military force, they basically at will can low-key like not technically declare war, but start a war with whatever nation without Congress's approval. And I think that's
not true though.
Yeah,
like the Trump was my understanding is that because of the authorization for use of military force against Iraq, we have the ability for the president to do things in Iraq. Like that's a theater that we've opened that the president, he can't like start bombing Iran. Yeah, he can't start bombing like Iran or bombing Syria or whatever. But in Iraq, my understanding is that everything there is more or less fair game.
Yeah, it's already authorized, so that's why I'm confused. It's like,
so then what's your issue?
Passed.
But if that's your issue, then what's your issue, Logic, with the notion of Congress taking back that power and saying we don't like the way you used it, so we don't want you to have it anymore?
We're currently okay. If we're gonna win, and I've said this, I am not for doing these wars. So if we're going to do that, then we need to get our troops out of there. But then by doing that, we also have to understand that enemies of us are going to have bigger influence in the Middle East. So you need to balance the two. Do you want Iran, or do you want some of these tyrannical governments to have control of areas in the Middle East, or do you want to have some influence there? You have to balance the two. And again, this was passed. Now you can take it back. That's fine. But that doesn't mean
that's the issue, though.
Okay, but that doesn't
trying to take it back.
But that doesn't mean
if they want to take it back, that's fine. Sorry, God.
I was going to say that doesn't mean any of these problems are going to go away with Iran. Like this is a really weird. People act like it's Iran all of a sudden they're going to stop doing what they're doing. It's not the truth.
Well, I guess what I'm pushing back against is this notion that the president should have unlimited power with war and peace, when like the Constitution has a war powers clause, right? It's not just the president's purview alone.
But the military force has already been authorized, so now it's the president's call as the head of the military, as the commander in chief.
No, but what I'm saying is like the whole issue is Congress is trying to take that back, and it sounded like Logic was saying Congress should not be able to take.
My understanding, I will bet $10,000 that Loyal Logic would be totally okay if Congress revokes the authorization of the military force. Yeah.
Well, and good, because it sounded like you were talking about a slippery slope.
No, I say
The slippery slope is saying whether or not the president should be allowed to do this when Congress has already said he can do it.
yes.
That's the slippery slope, yeah.
Yes, I mean,
you-
because we have to understand, like, if we're gonna allow the president to do it, okay, and then in 5-10 years, then take it back. I mean, it's like, what standard are we setting for the president? How much power are we willing to take away from him? For again, I go back to Osama bin Laden because Destiny made the valid point. We need to execute operations like this in a quick and timely manner because there's only a limited amount of time. And if the Congress and it's slow. They want to ask all these questions, do all these hearings, and unfortunately, military doesn't work on those stringent timeframes.
Well, but we assassinated a top general of Iran. You know, some people would
He was
argue
in
that
Iraq.
there's. Well, but even worse, like Iraq is like, why are you doing this on our soil? The guy flew in like nothing was happening. He checked in, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he was
To be
driving.
clear, these are separate conversations. We're going to talk about whether or not we should have done it. It's a totally valid conversation. That's different than
sure.
should the president have the ability to do it. Yeah.
Sure,
Should we
and-
have done it? It's, yeah.
Yeah, and
Well,
I don't think it was right. I don't think it was right that I honestly, I said this on my stream. I've said it on a couple other streams. If we wanted to get him, we should have arrested him and tried him. I do think it was very, very, very bad we did it that way because it did kill Iraqi officials. So again, but there it is. It's two different questions.
So it just seems like the public is starting to warm up to the idea of possibly repealing both or one of these AUMFs, the authorization for use of military force, whether it's the terrorism one from 2001, which seems open-ended. We can just go on a world tour from one country to another and somehow link it to terrorism. I mean, it just seems open-ended at this point. We've got young people serving in the military who weren't even around for September 11th. They don't even understand what's going on. So I just kind of wonder
Well,
if
that's the
like...
problem. Yeah, that's the thing about the authorization for use of military force, that it's, my understanding of it is that it's pretty vague. Like it's like to establish a stable democratic Iraq and then responding to terrorist threats emanating from Iraq. Like you could probably stretch that to encompass threats in Syria. You could probably stretch it to encompass people like Soleimani. Like, yeah, I'm sure like it's a pretty vague thing.
And it's vague and it's able to work because again, military you can't authorize every single different operation through Congress. It's vague for that reason.
Congress has said through the War Powers Resolution passed in the 70s, 1973, that Congress, the president has notified Congress within 48 hours of committing armed forces and forbids armed forces from remaining for more than 60 to 90 days without a congressional authorization for use of military force. I mean, Congress is ultimately delegating this power to the president. I guess the point that I think I was trying to push at is I think it's important to remember that this isn't just the president's power by default that Congress is trying to eat into. They're trying to protect their own power to decide where and what kind of wars we engage in.
Yeah. I mean, but we also, let's be honest here. Hopefully we all can be honest. We do understand that there is deep state CIA and operations that are going to go down no matter what. Like it doesn't matter.
What do you mean by deep state CIA?
Well, no,
I'm
like
not
see,
sure what that
they
means.
do. Well, there was wars in South America.
Of course
And,
not.
I mean, there were so there's we overthrow regimes. We've been doing it for decades throughout the world. So, and my point is that just because we do stuff like this through the Congress doesn't mean it's going to stop. We're going to keep toppling one regime for another. We just need to stop what we're doing at all. Like, but it's not going to happen. That's really all me trying to world peace.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's kind of a little bit of a pessimistic, frame of thought, right? I mean, the reason why America continues to topple regimes or has a very long history of it is because it has benefited American interest, right? And during these times, the American people in general either weren't as informed or couldn't really care less. This is going to sound really random, but just bear with me for a second. However, there are cases long ago, but there have been cases where American people have literally put power or put pressure upon the presidency or upon Congress acting to not have imperialist ideas in place. And the reason, this is a very long time ago, this is 1800s, but for example, Puerto Rico and Cuba, the reason why Puerto Rico was taken over is because there was a shit ton of Americans that were oh, if we're going to participate in the Spanish-American War, you guys better not have foreign interest in Cuba, because that's the big, you guys just want this war for Cuba. So then, the US decided to say fuck Cuba, we'll take Puerto Rico instead, so it doesn't look that bad on us. But the point I'm trying to get here is that although we can just wash our hands off and say it's always going to happen, I think that's not a very productive conversation to have. I think that we should focus on, maybe these things should be a little bit more public. Or maybe, if you're like, if the presidency or like the CIA or whatever does do like topple these regimes without Congress knowing at all, then people should be held accountable.
But they're not going to, though, and I mean, unfortunately, I agree with you, but it's not going to it doesn't happen that way. Like,
they're not going to. I mean, the CIA.
To show me a CIA representative that's been tried for war crimes.
There was I don't know about tried for war crimes, but I mean, the CIA or Congress has exercised oversight through I think it was called the Church Commission, where a lot of the CIA's strange and destructive activities, and the Church Committee, where Congress literally went over and reviewed what the CIA had been doing. I mean, maybe we didn't do our own CIA Nuremberg trials, but I mean, that's not to say that there's no oversight. I mean, we have.
Oh, I didn't say there was no oversight. I'm saying
I don't know. Like, it sounds like you're saying on the one hand, we have oversight, and on the other hand, nothing's ever going to change. It's hopeless.
I don't think it's the fact of like oversight. I think it's that we don't really have a mechanism for the people to hold accountable these officials, right? Like these are not elected officials. These are
they're deep state. They're deep state.
What does that mean? Hold
on. I think we're understanding.
Imagine like smoky rooms with like.
We're having a big misunderstanding of like where these things come from. So it's like it's not usually the CIA's fault or usually the NSA's fault for like where these actions come from. Like the fault lies within the administration, the president, and we do have a way for holding them accountable. And that's elections. We vote them out of office. Like the CIA doesn't unilaterally decide to like run in and do some shit. Like these are usually actions that are dictated by the administration of the U.S. government.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say to an extent, but some of these officials stay for a long time is all my point has ever been. Like a lot of these people will be in those positions for 20, 30 years. And so like, I agree with you, Destiny, to an extent. Elections are our best way, our best mechanism to hold them accountable, but only so much. Some of these people have stayed. I mean, there's people that have been in not public office, but been in office for 40 years.
And the reason why, and this is going to be a pretty, I'm sorry about this, but like Americans just don't care about foreign policy. Like it's just not something that we really care about. It's not something that we see in our everyday lives. It's not something we have to interact with directly, and it's not something we see the repercussions of really ever. And it's really complicated and hard. Like domestic issues are already really complicated and hard, and people already don't understand those. The idea of like trying to get the average person like super roped into like holding accountable these types of officials like probably is just never going to happen. It's just too much. It's so complicated.
Well, and it's also depressing too. Like it is very depressing when I've talked about these issues to friends. It's depressing. Like what are they supposed to do? Like, and if I will go and vote, and it's like, but it's not enough for them, so they kind of shrug and go, okay, I'm gonna go live my life, because there's not much they can do.
No, unfortunately, no.
Well, for now, I mean, maybe someday people will, interests will be different. Maybe a big, powerful China will scare everybody into caring.
Well, people only care about issues that are like. People only care about issues that are local to them, and like as long as like I'm out of work because my plant is shut down in my community, I'm not gonna give a fuck about what's happening in a country that I couldn't even find. I couldn't even tell you what continent it's from, which a lot of Americans probably couldn't figure around. So.
And you can't blame people for having that mindset. They have to feed their families. Like I feel like a lot of people think like, no, those people are focusing on their families, their community, and for them to be focused on geopolitics and foreign policy, it's like why should they?
Maybe the average voter will not care, but there are other ways to get involved to influence politics, like through interest groups. For example, a lot of countries, especially Saudi Arabia and Israel, have a lot of domestic supporters who
we're
are
doing right now too.
Politically connected, right? So maybe it's not easy to get a mass movement going, but you can still get some kind of democratic accountability through lobbying and other kinds of political involvement, even if it takes a second share when it comes to
lobbying, the most democratic means of
that is the thing. Talking to your elected officials and trying to persuade them about the merits of your position.
It only becomes a problem when if you want to talk to these elected officials, you gotta have like the connections with the right people and like a nice like big change of cash to make them listen to you.
I think other than voting, doing what we're doing right here is actually a way more better than any law, because look how many people are watching right now, over 1,000. Those people will go and talk, post, so that's my point, is like what we're doing right now is actually the best way other than voting to change.
Why is like the right so excited and supporting of Trump on this episode, whereas in Syria when we launched missiles a year or so ago, they were freaking out?
No, the right actually was really happy when Trump launched missiles on Syria. They weren't happy when Obama was using military force.
Well,
yeah,
I did see people come out and protest on the right, and I did see it. I saw a movement on the right of people saying we didn't vote for this Trump. Like,
I wish I had like the polling data, but it's insane. Like, the Democratic opinion was fairly consistent on being against the Republican, or I'm sorry, being against actions in Syria under Obama and under Trump. But the difference in Republican opinion under Trump versus Obama was night and day. It was like a 60-point difference. If somebody linked those polls again on my chat, I can show you. But like there were some people that were upset about it. I would say like the non-establishment Republicans, the Trumples, like the Tea Party descendants, a lot of those guys were upset about it because they meme about like, oh, we're anti-interventionalism. Or not meme about it, but they probably really are anti-interventionalism. But for the most part, the lion's share of the Republican establishment usually supports Trump no matter what the fuck he does.
Well, I just don't want people killed. That's my thing. I don't mind like if it was just military vehicles or whatever. I mean, it's still against it, but I mean, with Soleimani, my issue was that Iraqi officials were killed. So it comes out, yes, he should have been killed, but I'd rather have been tried. If he's in Iraq, I don't see why we couldn't have captured him. It's weird to me.
Well, like capturing him would require a lot more.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, I mean, we are the best country on earth for military operations. So, in my opinion, if we know he's there, I think there is a case to be made that we could have, done an operation like that. Now, again, it didn't go down like that, so this is just me going, what if,
Yeah, like to arrest him would have required U.S. troops on the ground. Like we would have like.
Yep.
Oh fuck! My history. I think we arrested some leader in Iraq before, but I think we were pressured by Iraq to release him. Where's my big?
I forget the general. I know you're talking. I'm trying to think
that in Iraq. I know that we arrested somebody before. I think it was when Maliki was the leader guy there, and I'm pretty sure Iraq was like, "Hey, America, fuck off! You need to let the guy leave." And then we turned him over to Iraq, and then they released him almost immediately after. I wish I could remember the name, but arresting somebody is like really hard versus just killing them. Like,
I know. I'm just saying, like, I mean, if the guy did do bad actions, so my point, and also I want to say this, like, this guy has been around for a while. Like, I did research when it happened. I mean, he's been in Iraq for a long time. Like, he's well revered. Like, it's the truth. He's well revered in the area in Iran. Like, this guy, he cried at funerals. Like, there's videos of him going to regular soldiers' funerals crying. So this isn't just some guy that's like in the like, he's been around. So if we really wanted to get him, my issue is we should have got him a long time ago before the threat got worse.
Well, the problem was that there were so many times when we were so close, I think, that like the guy has a very huge history in the Middle East, and there were times we were close to working together, and then times when we became enemies again. So I don't know. That's probably why. And then he also does represent, like, killing him is kind of an escalation of the conflict there. So yeah, I know that both the Obama administration and the Bush administration had pretty close eyes on him, but usually sided against.
Obama was close to getting him too. So it was just like, to me, I'm just kind of like, when I'm researching, I'm looking into it. It's not like this guy was some rando. Like, this guy was known, and I do feel like we kind of messed up. We really, killing the Iraqi officials, to me, actually does more harm in the region of Iraq, because it looks like to the regular people there that we don't care about their officials, and that's beyond the truth. A lot of people here actually do care about the Iraqi citizens and their officials.
It was Iranian official, but on Iraq soil, just to make
no. There was an Iraqi military guy.
Yeah, very high up.
You're talking about the other guy, and then plus the other 5, right? That are like unnamed. We don't know who the other 5 are as of right now.
No,
right?
we know. No, we know it's an Iraq. I forget. He was head of I believe, the police force, if I'm correct.
No, wasn't it like the financial something?
I thought it was the head of the police. I mean, I'd have to look at. I was reading it, but I mean, that was my issues. Like, so if we just killed him, okay, not many people, but we killed people that are our allies in the region, and that's where, to me, I kind of okay. Listen, we are messing up because it doesn't look good to the Iraqis there, and that's why people go, well, I mean, United States doesn't care about us. They just killed him to get, or killed our officials to get to that official. It's like, okay. I mean, was it correct or not? I mean, that's really what matters. I think it was, but it was really executed poorly, and I think there was other options, but it is what it is. I'm not against it. I'm just against the execution of it.
So what do you mean by that? Like, how else would you execute this?
Well, like I said, arresting him, maybe taking him. But again, like Destiny pointed out, that kind of gets, then it goes to Iraqis, them to release. But I don't think that was an option that maybe was explored. I don't know. I don't know what they were talking about in the war room.
So then he shouldn't have done it. Then you agree, right?
No, I agree. He should have taken him out. Like
This
I
guy
I think the answer would be we don't know if he should have done it or not because we don't have all the intel that they would have at the time and why they would have done what they would have done. It's always assholes fucking with other assholes and having us be the dick that gets it done.
Yeah, it's undeniable that Soleimani represented a massive foil to U.S. interests in the region. That's undeniable. It's also undeniable that Soleimani's had a hand in planning the murder. Well, I won't say murder, the killing of American troops in Iraq. We know that. That's undeniable.
Yep.
We also know that, well, this gets a little bit more political, but Soleimani supported the Assad regime or whatever, for whatever you think about the Assad regime. Like, these things are undeniable. Soleimani was a big playmaker in the Middle East. He was a foil to U.S. interests. You know, like, do we have the justification to kill him? Most likely. If you deny that, you're in some very strange areas. However, was it good to do it on Iraqi soil and betray our ally, kind of, by doing that and killing an Iraqis? Well, I mean, that's kind of, I think that's where the debate lies. Like, whether or not the guy will like actually kill Americans, or like, I would see a lot of these weird things with a lot of like progressives and shit online. They're like, stand by Iraq, like Soleimani did nothing wrong. It's like, I don't know that. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like
that's a very naive view of.
Well, yeah, the execution. I mean, there is a debate to be had about the execution. That's where I come in. That's where but to say he shouldn't have been taken out, it's like, how can you say that? There's enough evidence out there that's bipartisan too. That a lot of people on both sides agree, like, this man was a threat to our interest. He's planned attacks, he's killed people, and also not just us, many other countries throughout the Middle East. Like, so it's not like this guy was just a threat against us. He was a threat against a lot of people.
But this is a general in Iran. Like, this is an act of war, essentially. This isn't Osama bin Laden running some rogue group. Right?
It doesn't matter.
This is a general.
Hold on. Well, wait. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. Like, it is like a more sophisticated version of like Osama bin Laden. Like, this guy wasn't just like a military planner for, you know, Iranian army people. Like, this guy worked in expeditionary force that went all over the Middle East to do operations. Like, this guy had troops in Syria. This guy was really central in
Lebanon.
a lot of what was going on in Iraq. Yeah, this guy like was largely or responsible in large for a lot of the stuff going on with Hezbollah existing in Lebanon. Like, this guy did a lot of stuff in other countries. He wasn't just like, oh, I'm the general of an Iranian army. The Quds force that he was the general of, that he was the leader of, that force is a force that goes out to other countries and does stuff. Yeah, they're specifically not like just in Iran. They go to other countries and they do things over there.
I want to ask you, boss, do you really think that Iran was going to go declare war on the United States?
Look, probably not. And I remember arguing a lot that they wouldn't. But again, I mean, you have to consider that countries do sometimes respond in situations where maybe it doesn't make sense. Did it make sense that Japan would bomb Pearl Harbor? No, but they did it anyway.
Wasn't there? Fuck, dude, my history's so bad for stuff I haven't researched. Isn't the idea that, like, if you look at where Hawaii is on a map, like, wasn't the idea to destroy one of our very forward bases to inhibit the Americans' ability to launch war in the Pacific theater?
Right.
Like that, it was a strategic thing. It wasn't just like a random meme, right?
No, you're right. But the other thing was they concluded that the United States would then, as a result of that attack, kind of have a bloodied nose. It wouldn't have the stamina to fight. And so it was a bet that I think, I don't know what it was based on given America's history, but nevertheless they made that bet, you know, and it worked out to their detriment. I mean, but it also worked out to ours despite all the lives we lost.
But okay, so we have to understand this guy has a history of killing people, being tyrannical throughout the Middle East. This isn't just some random guy that's just a top general. So knowing what he's done in his past, we know he's going to continue this type of action. So therefore, don't you think we have some type of responsibility if he's in Iraq, not Iran, if he's in Iraq, to do something about it?
All I'm saying is that I think the United States should consider retaliation before doing this kind of thing. And the notion that Iran would never look again, it should consider that kind of thing. And the notion that Iran would never respond because we're just that big and powerful, I don't know that that's a reasonable assumption to make.
I mean, have they?
Right now, yeah. Right now they haven't. Trump called their bluff and it worked, but maybe next time it wouldn't.
I don't want to go full conspiracy, but I'm sure you've seen and heard the stuff that other countries wanted Soleimani taken out. I don't think it's entirely out of the question that they say, yeah, do this. In response, we're going to get your troops out. We're going to bomb your base. So you get a bloody nose. We get a bloody nose. And we all walk away from this. This asshole's dead and we don't look weak. And everybody hates Trump anyway. So you're really losing nothing.
It's a good thing it worked out the way it did. I'm glad it did. I'm glad he's dead, and I'm glad it worked out the way it did with no American losses. But
you say worked out as if like this is the end, as if like there's like no possibility of future retaliation or strikes or anything like that.
No American losses. There was the embassy attack or whatever.
Well, I mean, nobody died as far as I know.
The embassy attack, which nobody got hurt.
But
right?
I'm not trying to deny that possibility.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that I think to say that Iran would not retaliate because
mind waves. I have to ask you: do you deny the fact that he has killed people and had a way?
I don't give a shit about that. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think that we commit acts of war based on bodies that are already fucking in the ground. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's not bodies in the ground. It's bodies that are going in the ground in the future too. He was still in charge of like
exactly. Well, that's the only thing that matters is preventing future bodies from ending up in the ground. Like I don't.
The idea is that hampering Soleimani weakens Iran's influence and these other countries in the Middle East that America's trying to hold on to or prevent from falling into like the influence of Iran and Russia, right?
Yeah, that would be the argument, but is that necessarily true? I don't know that. I don't know that to be true.
But that is why you take him out. I mean, you have to understand what type of influence he had, Like, he had amazing influence in the region, not just Iran. He was throughout the entire Middle East. He was traveling to multiple bases. He had influence over thousands of tens of thousands of troops. So we're again,
which is more reason not to fucking execute him. Like that only mobilizes those people that support him, right?
They can lose. Even though this guy was revered, I don't think he was such revered to go to war with the United States. I just don't.
Well, I'm glad so far you're right. I just think that President Bush and President Obama decided not to kill him because they thought the blowback risk would be
Well, they had plenty of other people to kill. Obama hasn't had much action. Trump hasn't had as much action. Obama had weddings to drone strike. Bush had whatever he had. I mean.
Trump's
got to get a piece, doesn't he? Government is violence.
The idea that Bush, who's in my opinion one of the worst presidents we've ever had, and Obama didn't kill people. That they did. They killed plenty of people throughout the whole Middle East that we could have had issues with and started a war, but they still did it anyway.
I hope Republicans turn on President Trump as fast as they've turned on President Bush now that it's convenient to do so. But ultimately, I think that President Bush had intelligence of his own. President Obama had intelligence of his own. So far, we haven't seen what President Trump based his decision on.
What are you talking about?
He killed. Wait.
He
if
killed
Soleimani were at a wedding, Obama might have drone strike.
Yeah, what are you talking about, boss? It's again, destiny said it. I'll say it again. This guy killed people by the thousands.
Let's be really clear. So what Bastia is talking about is like the president claimed that there was like imminent threats that he was planning. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think you needed that as a justification, but Trump did say that was the reason. I don't know if that's true or not.
How do you feel about Iran saying that they're going to like withdraw from the nuclear deal or that they're not going to like uphold it anymore, right?
They were already working their way out of that. Like every few months they would roll back another provision, unfortunately, because Trump already exited.
Yeah, they were already on their way out. Like everybody knew that once Trump got out of it, they slowly but surely. So this had nothing to do with it. They were getting out of it no matter what.
Okay, so I guess like this is just like a question in general, and I guess it goes back to the whole thing of restricting powers or giving them back to Congress. Don't you think it's like kind of scary that like every 4 years a new president can come along and basically change like how every country can interact with us in general, especially when it comes to like I guess like especially like military things as well.
That's why people should say that like some of these things like should be done via Congress legislatively, so they have to be undone legislatively rather than through executive power. We can fire that criticism over at DACA, for instance. The reason why DACA is so easy for Trump to get rid of is because it was signed into order via executive action, not via legislation. Yep.
And that's what I said. I said, listen, if you want DACA, I was for do it, but do it the correct way so then another president can't come along and undo it. Executive orders are always can be undone. So again, Pixie, your actual beef is with executive orders, but that's another issue of should the president have the right to do them? Well, but to what extent? That's what you're arguing.
Well, you got to add declaring national emergencies in there too. Donald Trump has started to abuse that as well, right? And
declaring a national emergency to build the wall.
Exactly. So you add all these together, and Congress starting to get pissed off. You know what I mean? They're starting to lose a lot of their power. That's what these people care about. These elected officials, out of everything, power means the most to them.
Well, it should with respect to the power of their institution, but normally it seems like they're willing to sign away. There's some kind of iron law of institutions or something where officials are willing to sign away officials are more interested in their power within an institution than the power of the institution itself. And I think that dovetails pretty well with the fact that Congress has given up so much power to the president.
Because I don't think Congress
foreign policy, but with a lot of things.
Yeah, I don't think Congress is very interested in power for themselves. Congress is interested in power to their party. So if they can cede some power to the executive branch, but the executive branch is like their guy, I think they're okay with that.
Well, I would say that to an extent, though, Destiny, I think we can all argue, say that they do care about some power on their own personal level, but I do agree with you. It is about preserving the party because we have seen officials, they take big donor checks from certain companies, and then when they're going to pass legislation, they'll insert something. So again, I get what you're saying, but we do have to understand they do care about personal power to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent, sure.
I guess like what I'm most worried about, and I don't know exactly how you would like legislate it, and maybe some people are going to be talking about like balance or whatever, but I think it's really dangerous that like, let's say that for whatever reason, and I doubt like anybody would do this, but let's say we have a president in the future who decides to kill like the head of a state of another country because they think that it's a threat or whatever. That's an act of war, period. Now, Congress might have not declared war, whatever. There is no way that you can like get away with that shit without the country wanting to fight back or certain people in the country wanting to fight back. So it's just really worrying that, you can easily theoretically have an example where a president takes such severe action and plummets our nation into war. Like that. I don't think
there are going to be other leaders that are comparable to Soleimani's role in the Middle East. That's the thing. Like, you don't have like Putin going down and like hand orchestrating like the killing of American troops in Iraq and stuff. Like, I don't think anybody is as involved in that region as Soleimani is.
Yeah, I don't. If you look into it, you're going to be. I think a lot of people, not you, Pix. I'm just talking about in general. Once they look up like this guy and how much, I mean, he's not, again, you're going to go, holy moly, this guy was involved in actual troops. Like, he went to troops, this guy was around. So that's he's right.
Well, I'll get completely honest. I never heard of this guy until the other day when
he's been around for a long time.
Never heard of him before.
I never heard of him before either. Call me stupid,
that's weird,
but I never heard of him before he became public enemy terrorist #1. I never heard of this guy.
Yeah, he's been around for a long, long time. If you go look up, again, throughout the
obviously
research,
we know that now, but I'm saying I never heard about him before.
Well,
he wasn't on any radar, it seemed.
Well,
not for like public discourse.
Yeah.
In Iran, everybody knew who he was. In Iraq, people knew who he was. Yeah.
I'm still putting my money on Warren for the Democrat nomination.
Really? Why?
I still think she's a sleeper. Well, I think the DNC is likely to pull the same thing they pulled in 2016 and look at Warren to be
I think that
ace in the hole.
I think that Warren has. I think the next debate is going to be really interesting. A lot is just like so much has happened in terms of like the polling. Warren had like a massive uptick in October, where for a brief moment in time, even she was like almost the front runner. She might have actually passed Biden in a lot of aggregates, and then she kind of like slipped off a lot. Not much really happened. If you look at the polling for like New Hampshire and Iowa, Bernie's campaign has made a lot of headway since October as well. Whereas they were like in a pretty solid third place. Bernie, even on aggregates, is starting to poll first in New Hampshire and in Iowa, and not just on a single poll, but like on the aggregates. Like Bernie's campaign is like right now #1 in New Hampshire and Iowa, and winning both of those states, that's a lot of fucking momentum. I think that those two, you saw that Pete's campaign was like leading in Iowa for a while, and then they've started to slip off a little bit to where I think he's kind of in second, like fighting head to head with Bernie. But Biden and Warren are also very, very, very close behind too, and even New Hampshire, that's like a 7-point race between Warren and Sanders. All of these races in these two early primaries,
very close,
really, really, really close. Yeah,
I think it's too early to tell. I do think at the end of the day, I think Killer Stevens right. I think it might be Warren, but I have said Joe Biden, is somebody who, across the board, people might not like him online, but I'm sorry, he actually hits a lot of the Rust Belt people, the moderates. So
those blonde leg hairs, man, how can you say no to that?
Well, but here's the thing, we meme about this stuff. I've always said we meme about all this stuff he says, but the common everyday American doesn't give a shit. Like, so I want people to understand, like, we meme about it, but they don't care about all these slip ups he's doing. Well, like, we like to
think that's why he does so well. The name recognition is really strong.
They don't care. He polls well with these key voters, and I do think it's too close to tell, but I just think don't count Joe Biden out yet. Yeah, we like to meme on him, but the average American doesn't care about that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Well, another question is diversity. I mean, we've got a lack of it on the stage right now. Andrew Yang has a complaint about it. Cory Booker's complaining about it, but this is what we got. You guys think it's a concern?
I think the diversity is actually really good. We don't have people of color right now, which sucks. It's all white people. But you have a woman, which is really cool. After Hillary, Hillary's not the only woman that can run for president. And you have a gay guy. That's pretty cool too.
True.
We don't have any people of color, of course.
And a Jewish person. And a Jewish person.
Jewish.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was about to say. Well, I've always said I don't care about diversity, but I do think there is a good array of it on the stage.
Good diversity of viewpoints too.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot. I mean, so there it's too close to call right now, but I do think there's enough for voters to kind of mold over.
Yeah, I mean, but Andrew Yang would disagree with you. I mean, to the point where he's saying that the DNC should have commissioned additional polls in early voting states to allow him to get on that stage. He thinks he's got that double-digit approval rating from people in those early voting states.
I think he does. I think he's got a case for it.
No, it was kind of strange that they didn't have any polls after the last debate. It would seem that was kind of strange, but I mean, I don't know that it's some attempt to go after him personally or something.
I can understand him being upset by it, though. Sure.
But yeah.
It was like 35 days since there was a poll, I believe, in an early voting state, something like that. Obviously, it's the holidays and, things calm down a bit. But yeah, it seemed like a little bit of an oversight by the DNC. But then on the other hand, we got somebody like Tom Steyer, the budget billionaire, who just ran ads, spent millions of dollars in South Carolina and Nevada, 2 early voting states that nobody is campaigning in. And all of a sudden, he's at 12%.
I don't see shit here for him in Nevada. Maybe I just don't go to the places that they're advertised. I don't know. I haven't seen it. It's kind of funny.
Well, somehow he's at 12% or so now. People picking him as the best candidate for the Dems because he's just pouring money into states that nobody's campaigning in. So, any thoughts on that you can just go buy your way on there?
I think for the Dems, if you look at his policy set, it seems like he's aligned. So, I mean, I think also like when people hear about him, they go look him up and they go, hey, this guy's actually not what I thought. So I think that has something to do with it too.
You know what would make it so much better so that one person can have so much power with all this money for advertising? I think it would be really cool if we were to empower Americans with a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month. We could take the money into the hands of billionaires and put it in everybody's pocket.
Bloomberg comes out. I just want to kind of ask where you're coming from on his position. He comes out and says, I will fund campaign staffers for the candidate even if I'm not the nominee. Are you against that?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Was that directed to me?
Yeah. I want to know what you're feeling on that. He has stated that even if he is not the nominee, he will spend upwards of $1 billion to defeat Trump and provide staffers and campaign donations to the nominee. Are you against this? He is a billionaire.
Wait, who are we talking about?
Bloomberg.
Yang?
Mike
Bloomberg. Oh, I don't give a shit, dude. I really don't give a shit. I don't think he should be able to do that in the first place. I don't think that people with more money should have more influence in politics. Period.
Well, that's what I was asking. It's like, okay, I'm just making sure. Like, okay, and again,
even if it benefits my side, I'm not for that.
Well, no, it wasn't about.
You can really legislate that out, though. Like, you're always going to have these people that are able to do kickbacks and bribes and various things. Yeah. It's just going to be under the table. At least now you have some way to track it or see who's giving money to who. You can say that, like, if we limit people's financial capital be influencing politics, that they're still going to use their social capital to influence politics. I would agree with you, but I would say that limiting their financial capital influencing politics is a step in the right direction, right?
Well, and I think again, campaign finance, trying to balance it to where the people do have a little bit of say. Again, tax. There's a discussion we had, but I think getting rid of the big donations, I don't think that's because again, social capital sometimes can play a bigger role than financial.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But how do you limit somebody's freedom to openly endorse somebody just because they're socially influential?
Well, I think somebody's ability to spend money on an election.
Yeah.
You do that without trouncing over everything. Let's say I want to make a documentary on climate change. Should I be allowed to do that, or am I not allowed to do that because it's political speech and you're limiting how much money I can spend on stuff like that? Can I advertise?
Well, it's not political speech that I give a shit about. You can use your money for political speech all you want, but not when it comes to directly influencing elections. I think that's where.
Wait, real quick. You said you think so. If you want to spend money on shit like that, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not directly contributing to a campaign, right?
Well, I would include super PACs.
Well, no, you just described
where you're going, right?
What you described was a super PAC. If I want to put a bunch of people together, put our money towards something, I should be allowed to do it as long as it doesn't go to a campaign directly. Like that's where we're at right now. I don't like it because there are obviously bad things that come from it. But the idea, the alternative is worse to me. The idea that like, hey, like I want to do a documentary on like the alt-right, but I'm like 2 years out from an election, and maybe that's political speech, and now I literally am not allowed. That seems like a huge First Amendment violation.
Well, and then also, what if the candidate is featured in the documentary? You know, that's also
that's
something.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, even if they're not featured.
Well, I think even if they're featured, I mean, it's like kind of what you're saying, Mind Waves, is like they can't be featured because it's funded, it's promoted, it's pushed out to all these theaters.
Sure, there's a difference, though. At least I think, between somebody like choosing to put in capital to like make a documentary to like somewhat support like a candidate, and then like having like PACs, which are like literally like body like organizations which solely exist to endorse certain candidates, right? I think that's completely different.
But they're coming together, though.
I would say super PACs. I maybe you guys can change my mind, but I definitely don't think they should be allowed. I don't think that you should be able to air commercials and technically not be associated with the candidate directly, but basically endorse them all the way, right? I feel like it's basically just like a loophole we have to close up.
Okay.
Does that mean all political? Does that mean all political speech can't be allowed? I think there's a very big difference whether you're like airing a documentary talking about climate change or whatever, and airing a specific documentary trying to push forward a specific candidate.
Let's have a little fun with switching a little bit here, staying on the 2020 Dems. Though we know Steven said that Warren has the best chance. Why don't we go around and see who you guys all think has the best chance of beating Trump? I'd be curious about
Killer
that.
PH Steven.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
The much better looking Steven.
Oh,
So
Shots fired. Dude.
I don't know, Destiny. Who are you leaning on? Because I've heard many different things, but who do you think has the best chance to beat Trump? Not, you know what I mean? Just in that regard.
I think in electability, I think isn't Biden still ahead on most of the polls for electability? I know that favorability shows different things, but I think it's really hard to figure out how valid electability is right now before we've even gotten to the general. So I don't put much stock in that. Although I think to average voters, I think electability is a really important quality that they look for.
And what about if you had to vote tomorrow? Who would you pick?
Like assuming like all the Democrats were running against like Trump, or
just in the Dem primary.
You could pick Trump, right? Is that an option?
Man, I'd have to think about it a lot. I don't like him policy wise, but like if Bernie could make more headway with minority voters, I feel like Bernie has a decent shot in the general. And then if Biden could make, I mean, Biden is pretty popular. Biden has a shot as well, so it'd probably be one of those two. And then Warren probably represents maybe a good combination of like progressive policies, but being a little bit more pragmatic. Maybe.
Interesting. I could see Bernie getting a huge endorsement that pushes him, wins over a lot of the black community. I mean,
I'd
somebody
really
like
to see
Stacey
Bernie,
Abrams or something.
Seeing Bernie on a debate stage against Trump would be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, I worry about that too with some of the other candidates. Like Mayor Pete versus Trump is just hilarious to me.
All of them would. I can't wait.
My biggest worry though is my biggest worry is that we get Bernie on that stage and he actually fails. That would be because his performances in a lot of the debates has been pretty. I love the dude. He's my vote, right? But like it has been, exactly.
His last debate was actually pretty good. If he comes out more like
he did better the last one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, but if he debates Trump, it's not about a good debate. Like Trump's not going to debate Bernie. He's going to have little one-liners and nicknames, and it's going to be all humor. So how Bernie would combat that is going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah,
that's the thing, though. Bernie does that as well. Bernie and Trump represent two sides of the same coin, which is populism. Bernie does populism on the left very well. Trump does populism on the right very well. Having Trump say some shit like, I'm going to lock her up, and then Hillary coming out with some nuanced explanation of a policy thing, it's just not effective with the average dumb fuck voter in America. No, I'm sorry, America. But like, but Bernie's really good at the one-liners. You know, like, I wrote the damn bill and free healthcare, the 1%. Like, he's really good.
That can only get so hard.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff is really rhetorically effective. You know, Trump is good at it as well. Lock her up, build the wall, the nicknames. You know, Sleepy, whatever, Sleepy Ben Carson.
Did he ever have one for Bernie?
Crazy Bernie. That's what he goes with.
Was
so
it just
far,
Crazy
though.
Bernie?
I think.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he found like the most anti-Semitic nickname possible and just called him it. And
Oh, come on. Come on.
wouldn't surprise me if he did it. I mean, he
Come
literally
on.
called Warren.
There are good people on both sides.
Yeah, but
remember?
I'm okay. Yeah, but there's a huge difference.
But isn't she
there,
not
so-
actually Native American, which kind of removes the?
No, she's not.
No.
I find.
the
Wait,
equal
hold
to-
on. I'm gonna drop a nuclear take on this real fast. Okay, people have a very bad understanding of what makes you an American Indian. Okay, and Elizabeth.
I'm
Warren-
Native American. My father was born on a reservation. So.
Well, no. So the problem is that being a Native American isn't about your blood. That's like a common misconception that even I had until. a
I
few months
agree.
ago.
You're,
Yeah.
you are.
So the thing is that like if Warren had an ancestor that was like part of some tribe, it is possible that she could still be considered like an American Indian under said tribe. Yeah, her fuck
You're
up
right,
was trying to get a
okay.
blood test for it and saying like, oh look, I have the blood of a Cherokee, therefore I'm an American Indian or something.
I do feel I want to say if Warren's like uncle, something like, but when she has no family, that like my father was born on a reservation, he is Native American. When she doesn't have that, it is semi disrespectful, and
Well, wasn't her grandfather literally like that was why she said it, right? She's like,
No.
oh, I had a grandfather that was a.
No, it was all speculation from the family.
Okay.
That's
And that was what she
why
said.
it was.
She did say that afterwards. She said, I
Yeah.
had been told.
That I had like a grandfather or something. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was like the smartest thing to do, but like
Sure.
that doesn't mean that like if some guy comes out and says that he's like 1/3 black and he's not, I can't call him like N-word Nick or something. Like
Yeah.
it's not okay to call him
I get-
Pocahontas
I
because like,
get-
that's insane. Like that's
I
crazy.
get your point. I get your point. I just think when
You
she
might be
doesn't
able
have
to. I
any
don't know.
immediate relatives or
You
distant
can only do that in
relatives,
private, Destiny. Remember?
and she can point, and
Some
she
people
could
get certain passes. We won't touch that.
if she could have pointed to a Native American relative that she knew about, like let's say it wasn't my father, let's say it was my great grandfather. Could I say I'm Native American? Maybe under your, but I think it's wrong. Not wrong too, but it's like, come on. But she couldn't do that, so it's kind of like, come on.
I have more Native American than Warren.
Yeah.
Well, it was a huge
Wait,
misstep.
but real quick, that's what I'm saying. Like you
Yeah.
don't have Native American blood. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to be
Right,
Native
right.
American because your bloodline. Like it's about your
Yeah.
initiation to a tribe. Like I could go and become like an American Indian if I were to join a tribe and do the rituals and do the process. Like
It depends what tribe. I mean, my tribe, you have to go by relatives.
But it's not like you know how Native American. Well, hold on, let me check my 23andMe profile to figure it out. Like that's not
Yeah.
how that calculation is done.
Yeah, exactly. Like the example when I had to go register with my tribe, you have to with the person. It's not just hey, just register. I get what you're saying.
I think that Bernie Sanders, the way he's trying to differentiate himself from Warren, is to say that like, hey, look at what I've done. I have grown a grassroots movement around me. I have the support, right? I'm able to motivate people to go out to the polls.
That's not what he said.
And
He said she's not bringing in, and from what I mean, can you say exactly, because it sounds like he's saying she's
I'll
not
read the
bringing.
quote. It says he prefaced the script that was going around was prefaced with, I liked Elizabeth Warren. In fact, she's my second choice, but here's my concern about her. And then it goes on to say people who support her are highly educated, more affluent people who are going to show up and vote Democrat no matter what. She's bringing no new people or no new bases into the Democratic Party, which I agree with.
I think that's a fair statement. Like no
Fair
new
critique.
That I don't know. I think this idea of like we have to be civil to like all the candidates that are involved in the primary race is like I don't like this. Like the primary is where you're supposed to set yourself apart from the other candidates. You're supposed to play hardball, right? You're supposed to be like, you know what, this other candidate, they're not as good as I would be, right? And for these reasons, and that's exactly what Bernie did, and with this like paper that was going around with his volunteers. And then Warren makes a statement that she's disappointed that Sanders reportedly is sending his volunteers out to trash me. It's like, well, no, he didn't really trash you at all. He actually complimented you, and then he went ahead and clarified why he differentiates himself from Warren, right? That's completely acceptable. And for Warren to go ahead and play this civility politics card and act like she's offended that Bernie Sanders made this statement is bullshit.
No, all of these guys are playing cards for points. Bernie and Warren did it to the other candidates when they were talking about, oh, I'm not going to take real wealthy donor money, but I'm not going to do private fundraising. All of this is like a meme for fucking politics. Bernie's campaign attacked Warren's campaign. He should. He's trying to differentiate himself. Don't pretend he's not.
Yeah, they should.
Part of the game. Yeah, of course.
Loyal Logic, did you want to
worth the
cap it
price.
off with who you think could beat Trump right now? I know you're not voting in that primary, but still.
I don't think anybody really can beat Trump. I've said this time and time again. I just think it is what it is, and I think that really the Democrats have a good opportunity in 2024 to put up a candidate and they need to do what they should have done in 2016. I've said this multiple times. In 2016, they should have took the loss and they should have built up the party, but instead they kind of just really didn't do it. So hopefully,
You really don't think Anybody could
I don't
beat
think so.
Trump,
I
a
think that
candidate who literally squeaked into the White House.
when he wins again, you guys,
against a candidate like
That's
Hillary
fine.
Clinton who had unparalleled unfavorability. You think he's like
He's
now the
gonna win, and
unbeatable
we're gonna-
candidate?
he's gonna
I'm with
win.
Loyal with the question framed that way of who do you think could beat Donald Trump. I'm not 100% convinced any of them can. When I say Warren, I think Warren will get the DNC. I think it's going to be a good race regardless of who is up against Trump, because there's a lot of people that would literally vote for Dennis over Trump. I mean,
If your question is who is left in the race, that let's say, I think Tulsi, if they actually did get behind Tulsi, I think Tulsi really did. She has the social issues. She has everything that
Tulsi, wait, what are this weird like Republican or these like?
No. I'm saying no.
Tulsi has no
She
chance
has
of doing anything ever. She's an idiot.
No.
She's a loser of a candidate. Her policy positions are super naive. Like,
Well,
wait,
that
what?
wasn't the question. But no, that wasn't the question. No, but that wasn't the question, Destiny. The question was what candidate? Like, yeah, I agree with you, but what candidate? Because I feel that she still appeals to the moderates and some Republicans. Like, I'm not a super, oh my God, for Tulsi. Like, I'm not. I'm just saying the question is who do you think? I don't think she has still shit, but out of everybody, I thought that she has the most appeal to all sides. So, but again, Trump's going to win. It is what it is.
not left, not right, but forward. We had him. We let him
The
sit.
problem I always think about Tulsi is that like people on the right are like, yeah, I would actually consider voting for her, and moderates will probably vote. But what about the rest of the people on the left? Like they're gonna be
I think the
disgusted by
social
her.
issues. No, because I think some of the social. I think if she did get the nomination, they see a lot more of her social issues. She is very progressive on a lot of her issues. So I mean,
push back on you, Loyal, and saying that if most of the people on the right that are like, yeah, Tulsi actually took the time to look into her policy position,
wouldn't like her.
they would throw up and not vote for her anyway.
Yeah, well, I've just said that's what. But what I'm saying is that I'm with Destiny. It's like, why do all these people? Because it's weird to me. But the question again was, who do you think has the most viability? Now it's going to be Joe Biden probably, but I mean Bernie has the polling's indicating some surge. We'll have to see. I think it is too early to tell, but Biden is probably going to get the nomination. He's going to squeak by though.
All right. It sounds like Pelosi's finally sending over the articles of impeachment. She withheld them for 3 weeks, trying to get more favorable rules for the Democrats. She wanted them to agree to have witnesses and additional documents. John Bolton, former NSA, said, hey, if you subpoena me, I'll show up. He would have been a rock star witness. Now Mitch McConnell seems to have won by saying, hey, we just want to abide by the Clinton impeachment rules, where opening statements are done and then questions are submitted by senators, and then we vote to see if we need more witnesses. So and one thing to note is that a couple of the people running in the lead, like Bernie and Warren, are sitting senators. They're going to have to sit there as jurists 6 days a week, by the way, starting at 1 p.m. each day. That's how it works. Do you guys think this impacts anything, or does this hurt Trump at all? Anything that comes out in this trial?
My biggest worry is that like we know that the Senate's not convicting Trump. I wonder if the average American will see that as like an exoneration of everything wrong he's done. Like, they tried impeachment. Yeah, it went to the Senate. They did the trial. Nothing came of it. I mean, I guess Trump's cool because a lot of people
Especially with no witnesses.
Unless they bring up bump stock bans, he's innocent in my eyes.
I don't know. I feel like, or at least from like I read about like how many bills the House has passed versus like how many bills like Mitch McConnell specifically, but you can just say the Senate in general has like introduced from those bills. It seems like before this impeachment stuff even happened, the Senate has been a little bit like useless, right? Or it hasn't been.
They passed a $1.4 trillion spending bill, so they're not that useless when they can come together and spend.
That's pretty fucking useless for a Republican majority that's supposed to be against massive spending, but
yeah, of course.
I mean, what was it?
Pixie's
Like over
right.
248, I believe. I'm not sure now. Bills were passed in the House that the Senate hasn't like even like freaking introduced, right? Or has like decided to like put off. And honestly, like I get why, right? Mitch McConnell doesn't want to introduce like Democratic bills because he's like a complete like I guess like partisan hack in a sense. But
Bipartisan when it comes to money spending bill.
they all are bipartisan when it comes to fucking spending money.
Yep, of course.
Well, that's not necessarily true. When we say that bipartisan spending money, those spending bills are always big fights over partisan issues, over like getting your particular projects funded. Like usually that's
really more optics than anything. At the end of the day, though, neither party cares about deficits and budgets.
But Destiny, I have to ask you then, how much of a debate was actually had about this $1.4 trillion spending bill? I actually
we didn't get a government shutdown this time, did we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, this spending bill caught a lot of people by surprise. I mean, yeah, like him or hate him, but Ted Cruz even said like this is a travesty. You might not like Ted Cruz, but he brought up a good point. Even the left was going like, hey, Ted Cruz is bringing up a good point, and he is on the Republican side. All my point is that these people will get things done when it's advantageous for their big donors or their lobbyists or whatever side. But when it comes to the American people getting things done, they really fumble the ball a lot. Now, not always. They do some good things. I'm not going to trash them completely, but I think this impeachment just shows you that they're going to take their time on these big theater things versus what actually matters.
But no, that's the point I'm trying to make. The House has passed bill after bill after bill after bill after bill consecutively and consistently, and the Senate hasn't done very much with it. So before impeachment, even during impeachment, you have this whole like stack of bills that the House has come together and passed, and you have the Senate not doing shit.
The Senate's passed bills. Yes, they have. They've passed bipartisan bills.
Well, there's a lot they are sitting on, is what Pixie's talking about.
Oh, no,
I've seen the social media posts of like the giant stack of.
Do you guys remember earmarks?
Yeah, that happens under every administration, though.
No, do you remember like the notion of earmarks, like being able to say, okay, I'll vote for your bill if you'll give me money for my pet project?
No.
Ever since they've been banned, and they've been banned for some years now, I think it started during the Obama administration, and it's 2011. Ever since they've been banned, politics have gotten more and more toxic, and I wonder if it would be better if we go back to the old system where you could fight like hell in public, but you could eventually come to some kind of agreement as long as you'd say, all right, well, I'll take the loss publicly as long as you'll give me a win privately in my district.
We'd have to go back
rather than trying to to opine for an era of civility, when in fact that era of civility was underwritten by the.
I agree. I think we would have to go back and kind of look at how many bills were passed and stuff. Because, like I was just telling Pixie, this happens under every administration. There's a stack of bills sitting in the Senate. It's not new. Like it's not like under a Democrat. There's no. It happens under every administration. It is what it is. But you're right, boss. You bring up a good point. Maybe if we go back and analyze how many bills were passed, how many bipartisan, did the earmarks help or not? It's good.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying is I think the ability to win something even when you lose is, I think, would be really important and would allow people to save face when they lose out on big issues or when they can't otherwise compromise on something. I think then you can at least take your earmark win home with you and say, well, we got you something in exchange for it, rather than everything being zero sum. I know they're not popular. People don't like that idea the same way they don't like, free or campaign money in politics, but I think it makes the system work. And I think at one point, I think we have more productive Congresses back then.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand a lot of the wheeling and dealing that goes on the floor when it comes to like getting votes passed for like certain types of legislation. Like this is really common. You'll see very common attack ads where people are like, "Oh, Bernie voted for the fucking spending bill," and it's like, yeah, he did vote for the spending bill, but that's because he got like what was it like a big fuck, I don't remember what it was. There's a huge spending bill that Bernie got, or it might have been a military funding bill that he got criticized for, but it was fought to get like a protection for women's act or whatever, like it funded under that bill.
Yeah, I think it was one of the NDAA, the National Defense.
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. And then similar things have happened with Warren as well. It's like, oh, well, she voted on this or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but the reason why she voted is because in order to secure her vote, somebody was willing to make a concession on that piece of legislation. And that's how a lot of stuff on the floor gets done. That, like, we think that like at the end of the day, like senators and congressmen just go and they're like, okay, let's read everything and see what I vote on. But the lion's share of the work is done, as much as people hate to hear, by people like Pelosi that are going out on the floor talking to congressmen like, hey, we need to get this done, we need to get this done, what do we have to do to make it work, what's going to work in your district, your constituents are going to be happy if you vote on this or that. Like, that's a lot of fucking work, and it's important work, and nobody really talks about it.
Well, that's a big
I think
purpose.
the takeaway there would be to empower people to be able to share like these same sort of to also have like the same sort of contact with their officials, instead of just allowing like only the elite to have like this sort of like direct reach to your representatives, right? But I don't know.
Well, I talked to my representative. I don't know about you, Mind. I talked to him on the phone.
But a lot of the times you try to talk to a representative, you get forwarded to the fucking like the voicemail, and they never fucking reply. Or you try to go down to their office and you get rejected, and like a lot of them don't have any interest.
I've never had that. I've never had
delegates.
that. Well, I've never had. I mean, and I'm in a pretty busy area of California, so I feel a lot more people need to do what you're saying. Interact, try as best as you can, and get what you're talking about out there. If you really believe that impeachment is important and they need to do right by it, then you need to really be calling your senator right now. You need to be going out talking to them. I'm not for it, but that doesn't mean I'm not for the process.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're memeing or not, but like writing letters to your congresspeople and stuff is actually a really effective way of getting a response to people. Like people rate that stuff incredibly highly. When they start getting letters or phone calls about shit, it means a lot to the local offices. Maybe not to like a senator maybe or something, but especially for Congress people or for people like for local politics is really important.
But I even wonder if a staffer, like say I'm in Nevada and I'm sending to my, person that, I want full auto machine guns and get rid of the NFA, and that their staffer's like, fuck that, he's out of his mind. And they say they get 1,000 letters that say the exact same thing. If that staffer is super opposed to guns, do you think they're even going to bring that up to the
I think they might.
They have to. They'll get fired if they don't, dude. That guy shit canned if the guy's getting a lot of letters and they have no idea about it.
Destiny, thank you for joining us. I know this is your second round table of the day. What a streaming god, man. I do like 3 hours and I start losing it. So thank you for coming here, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So again, big purpose of all this just to bring people together. We're not trying to solve the world's problems, but just get a bunch of people together with different political beliefs and show that we can get along just fine, and we can speak passionately and walk away as friends. So thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it.
I love you all.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Have a good night.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Have a good
All
one.
right.
See, if somebody else is uncomfortable with an issue, I don't care. My responsibility is to my audience that's going to listen to the message I put out or the thousands of people listening.